What is going on, everybody? Happy Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Thanks for checking into our latest Trade of Black podcast. Still got this hoarse voice, so bear with me here and be patient with me here as I try to battle through today's podcast. A little under the weather, but I'll be all right. Good little podcast here today. We've got actually the CFO of a cannabis stock that surged 35% actually in revenue coming up in just a moment. It's CFO from Cannara Biotech, first time to the podcast. Nick Sosiak is going to be joining us in just a moment to go over some of the details on some of these latest numbers and why they grew so much. As well, Michael Bronstein for Insider's Edge will join us. Latest policy updates going on in Washington, as well as Pennsylvania and in Texas. So with that, let's welcome in Anthony Varrell here on a Monday.
How is it going?
I'm good. I think I pronounced his last name wrong, but I'll have him on in just a second. But before we get into that, I saw an interesting press release this morning. High Tide. They did $6.8 million on 4/20, the day of. That's an impressive.
I think it was 10% year-over-year growth. I mean, people buy cannabis on 4/20. People buy cannabis leading up to 4/20. It was all over Twitter. I'm sure it's gotten bigger as the industry's grown.
Yeah.
On both sides of the border. And I know that Emily Paxi, I think she was like live tweeting, counting some of the data rolling in through Headset, which they were doing. But yeah, it's a boom for cannabis companies. It's probably the same as what alcohol companies see when the Super Bowl rolls around.
Yeah.
4/20 probably has that same effect. It's good to see, and good to see High Tide taking advantage of it.
Yeah. For anyone that wants to know what's going on in the industry as well, there's a massive event actually going on in Germany right now, ICBC, and it's huge. We were speaking to a few people there, including Raj and Omar Khan from High Tide. They're there right now. They actually wanted me to share that they're receiving a ton of mergers and acquisition opportunities from German distributors, and that they're having multiple conversations, but are being patient to get the best deal for shareholders, ensure it's right. And also pointing out they produced $1.8 billion in cannabis sales since 2018, and that they feel they have the right relationships to fill the German medical cannabis supply gap. So onwards and upwards, because I know there's a lot of players from the North American market that are over there in Europe right now. And we're going to be going over to Germany, like I said, last week in June. But this is a big time event. So a lot of relationships will be formed. And if you see announcements and acquisitions later on down the road, it's probably from relationships from an event like this. So keep that in mind. But how do we end up doing on the market as a whole? I think cannabis is kind of rallying, but it kind of bounced around towards the end, did it not?
It's off the lows. Air was the biggest loser of the day, down 15%. MSOX finished the day down 11.8%. They're off the intraday lows. Verano was bouncing all over the place today. It was down as much as 16. It finished the day down 10.
Yeah.
Mixed bag. I mean, the air is coming out of the rally that we saw last week. Go figure. Surprise, surprise. Should have expected what was going to go on today when we saw the air kind of deflate, or the balloon deflate in MSOS going into the close on Friday.
Yeah. I want to let everybody know too that we have reached out to Weldon Angelos to see if he can come on the podcast again. He met with obviously Donald Trump of the Trump administration last week, as we all know. He's reached out to us, and we're hoping to get him at some point later this week. So we'll keep you all posted to see if that can work out. Because if it is, man, wouldn't that be an amazing conversation to have to find out how things went and really what was, I don't know how much he can share as to what was discussed, but it'd be just great to see what his experience was like. And I know there's a lot of things he's probably working on right now when it comes to clemency, and rightfully so, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So with that, let's now move into our first segment here in the podcast here today. And what a story this has been. 35% climbing, adjusted EBITDA doubling year over year for Cannara Biotech. And with that, let's welcome in their CFO, Nick Sosiak. Good to meet you, sir. How are things? I like how you shifted that. You have a background in television?
No, I don't, but learning.
Well, you're learning good. So if you're ever tired of being a CFO, let us know. Give us your job application, and maybe we should hire you as a producer.
Thanks, Chad.
So
pleasure to be here, Chad and Anthony. Thanks for having me on the show.
I appreciate it. So your guys' head office, you're based out of Montreal, Quebec. Is that where you are right now? Yeah.
Yep. Out of Montreal.
Nice. How's the city? I know that's playoff hockey right now. Tough loss last night.
But, yeah, exactly. Let's not talk about last night, but we got to live with it. The city, it's a beautiful day today, so can't complain. Sun shining, 20 degrees. We got two facilities. They're about an hour away from each other, so it's everything's within driving distance and within reach from our head office here in Montreal.
Yeah, I won't ask who you voted for at the federal election, but hopefully it's for somebody that'll lower the excise tax in cannabis in Canada. But we'll see how that all develops. But listen, wanted to talk to you. Cannara Biotech, which trades with the TSX Venture under the ticker symbol LOVE. I love that. LOVE. Posted another record quarter with net revenues climbing 35% and adjusted EBITDA doubling year over year. Very impressive numbers, to say the least, especially given the current market climate going on right now. So really, at a high level, what were, I guess, the key drivers to give this record Q2 2025 performance? Because job well done.
Thank you. I mean, honestly, if you look at our track record, we've just been, focused on execution. In 2022, we purchased one of the largest hybrid greenhouse purpose-built for cannabis, state-of-the-art here in Quebec. It's over 1 million square feet. And it was built for over $250 million. And we purchased that one for $27 million. It was brand new, not a cannabis plant was ever grown in it, but we purchased it on day one when everything was ready for us. And ever since, we've just been, focused on growing that facility and growing our 3 brands, Tribal, Nugs, and Orchid, and maintaining the consistency and quality that our brands are known for. So that's why we're scaling in lockstep. Slowly, and making sure that quality is there and opening rooms after room after room. So really, like, this quarter is just organic growth and going both in our hometown here in Quebec. We grew market share to just about 13. This quarter is just about 13% of the total market here in Quebec. And we're less than 3% nationally in the other provinces. So there's a lot of room to grow, and we've been focused here in Quebec, just catering to the demand here. And last year we branched out slowly into the rest of Canada with our marketing and sales program. Before, we used to do it all organic, word of mouth, just cater to the bud tender, let the product speak for itself. And now we really focused on starting to build a sales team, and CPG engine behind our sales here in the rest of Canada, and I think that's what's increasing our market share. More people are getting to notice, getting to try our product.
Yeah,
we're getting shelf space, and there's still a lot of room for growth under our 3 brands that we created back in 2019 from $0 to. We're on track to over $100 million of net revenue.
I didn't realize, but Quebec actually has 9.1 million people. That's the second most populated province behind Ontario, is it not?
It is. It is.
And then Ontario is what, 14 million? I think sometimes we forget, like, if these were states, these are a lot of people in a region. But Anthony, fire away. I know there's a couple questions you wanted to ask.
With the growth that you're experiencing, for those that don't know, where do you live in terms of, let's say, product within the consumer? Are you focused on premium, mid-tier, value? Are you kind of creating synergies between all of those, or what are you seeing, and what's leading to the success that you've seen in terms of growth? Because the numbers speak for themselves.
Yeah. So from day one, our strategy was really like focus on we're cultivators, right? And then we from the ground up, we started cultivating the plant, and then we built the brands behind the cultivation, and built everything from, we're fully vertically integrated now, from doing our pre-roll manufacturing to BHO extraction and solventless. But really, we're focused on the quality of our product. So we really built our operation with that in mind. And then when we look to build our brands, because all the flowers cultivated by us, we couldn't make a best strategy on that basis, right? We're growing, we're not going to treat one room differently or another genetic differently. So we really focused on the quality, and then built those 3 brands, Tribal, Nugs, and Orchid. Tribal is really our house of genetics. So we start all our we're really adept and strong in our pheno hunting process, and spend a lot of money finding genetics. And that gets propelled into our house of genetic brand, Tribal, where once we find a genetic, we launch it under flower, pre-rolls, live resin extracts, and live resin vape. And now we just introduced our trifecta, which is a double and triple infused pre-roll. And then when we find other genetics that potentially have maybe more yield, that we can offer bigger packs at more affordable pricing, then it would go under our Nugs brand. And our Nugs brand also offers different flexibility on product development. So we go into cured resin carts, and we go into rosin, and we go into hashish, and we go into different types of infused. So we have more flexibility versus tribals. Like once you find a genetic, it goes into the program, and this is what you get. And Orchid CBD is really focused on CBD genetics. So hunting and finding different CBD genetics and then transforming them into an array of products. Eventually, we have live resins and edibles and oils, but eventually we'll go into topicals and beverages with that quality. So we did all that, and then we knew that the market is very sensitive in terms of price. So there's really a fine line between where that volume just falls ultra premium pricing structure. Your volume is not there in cannabis. Really, it's in that value tier just to that medium tier. So when we priced our products, we knew that we had to be medium tier to value tier, just that echelon right between those two. But we achieved that creating the highest quality product and really focusing on the product. Yeah. And all that was wrapped up because we're here in Quebec with 1.6 million square feet of grow that we bought for $27 million. We have the lowest cost of electricity in the country here in Quebec. At Valleyfield, we grow for 3.5 cents a kilowatt. Labor is also very reasonable here in Quebec, which is 75% of cost of cultivating a gram of cannabis, right? So that all that. I didn't know that. Yeah, all that got wrapped up into our value proposition where we're premium quality and we make it affordable. And that's really what we're trying to do is making, we don't want, if you have to play in that affordable segment, then I want to build the best quality that I can. And if I have, and build a sustainable company, and, we're doing that at 40 to 45% margins, and, we're happy there. And we just want to create a brands and scale that can cater to Canadian cannabis.
Healthy margins.
I know that you guys have been growing as we've seen a major trend with a lot of your peers in the LPs exporting a lot of their biomass into Europe and not catering to that domestic consumer. I know that you guys are you've activated your 11th grow zone, and I think are getting ready to activate the 12th here shortly. If you scale out Valleyfield completely, is that to cater to domestic production, or do you plan to start to export to the EU as well with the quality that you're growing? As I'm sure you'll be able to command a premium price going into Germany or any of the other jurisdictions abroad.
Yeah. I mean, we're already GACP and have our licenses to export. However, we've chosen a very strong strategy of staying focused here in Canada. We can open our 12 rooms over the next year and sell all that internationally. I'm pretty confident I could do that. But that's going to ruin the focus and what we're trying to build out here in Canada. So we're really, really building to be number one here. And that requires hyper focus in this market and the conditions of the current market. Just an example, if I had a product and it's selling and it keeps on selling, and for some reason I grew a lot and I sold it internationally, I don't have enough cannabis to cater to that SKU will get delisted. And then I can't produce or sell that SKU ever again.
Interesting.
So there's mechanics that you got to understand that it's a slow process, and finding the right genetics and that quality is not, it takes a year to pheno hunt a good genetic for us. I plant over 200 seeds in every quarter, and I'm hoping to get 2 to 3 genetics, maybe a line on one, right? So that's millions of dollars of spend because I'm taking out a room that I could make money on, and I'm carving that out for pheno hunting processes, right? So we're really, genetics is super important to us. And I think, international, as we take that time to formulate our genetic program, there's no one that we can call and trust and say, hey, give us the best genetics and what the market's never seen before. And we have to do all that work internally. And we're building that competencies and IP internally for Canada. Backup plan as we grow. Of course, if you have a room that's excess, as we're building more demand and supply chain, we might have to use a B2B channel or a retail international channel. But really the focus is on Canada, and up to a point where we have 3 brands, again, that are organically built. Like most of my competitors are in the market with 5, 6, 10 brands, right? So we have the ability to continue to scale with the brands, ability to scale organically within the types of products and the genetics that we have in our existing brands. And we're going to just do that in slow and steady with our grow rooms. And just to give you a picture of Valleyfield, the main facility is 600,000 square feet. It's a long hallway greenhouse that's all individually compartmentalized into 24 grow zones of 25,000 square feet. And if I put you in a grow zone right now, you would say, Nick, this is an indoor facility, because we black out the curtains, and then on nice sunny days, we'll open up the curtains and the sun gives that extra juice. Yeah. But each facility, like each 25,000 square foot room, it's a facility indoor room on itself, and we have 24 back to back, like just scaled right there next to each other. So we have the luxury of, it costs us less than $1 million to open a room, to generate over $10 million of revenue in that year. So the payback period is there. And, we're already cash flow positive. We're already net income positive, EBITDA positive. So, we're going to do this slowly and turn on a room and sell the thing. So whenever we turn on a room, it's a sign of confidence from us that, we're confident that we can sell this product in the retail market, and, continue to do so.
And is the strategy now, because I know that you have, I think it's a little bit under a 13% market share in Quebec, which is your highest concentrated province as far as market share. Is the strategy to continue to go deeper in Quebec, or it's to also broaden out and start to go deeper in those other provinces across Canada as other grow rooms come online?
Yeah, both. Absolutely both. Just an example, vapes in Quebec is not allowed till this November. So the first introduction of vapes in Quebec, a lot of restrictions, which makes creating a product extremely hard. But we that's what we love to do, and we're one of the number one live resin supplier in the rest of Canada. So we're really, really confident that we can do some serious sales here in Quebec with that launch. So that's going to continue organically growing, and every 6 months in Quebec and the rest of the provinces, every 3 months, there's new product launches, right? So you're always innovating, you're always bringing new genetics, and we put a lot of work again on our pheno hunts and our genetics. As an example, my gelato mint and my Cuban links, we pheno hunted 4.5 years ago. It is still in market today, selling, and my Cuban links is still the number 1 selling in my portfolio.
Okay.
So genetics, when you find right genetics that hit and have the flavors, like those stand the test of time. And that's what we're trying to do, is find those genetics that can stand the test of time, and people repeat, but give an array of 20, 30 different genetics and rotate them every 7 months. But you're going to find across those genetics ones that stand the test of time and people keep coming back to and keep showing sales. And then you bring in new ones and you test new ones until that, you find that unicorn, and that stays in the market. And that's what we're trying to do with our brands and our genetics that we're bringing out.
I listened to you describe your facility, and I don't know if you guys know this, but one thing you need to get on your bucket list is attend the Jazz Fest in Montreal. It's around the third week of June.
I broke ground on that facility when it was when T God completely squandered it. It's a beautiful facility.
Yeah,
it's nice to hear that you guys are absolutely knocking it out of the park in that facility, and growing the quality that you're growing, and have the ability to scale it. Well, because that facility for a long time was just in flux.
One of the things I wanted to add too is some of the conversations we've had, Nick, with other people in the Canadian market is, to Anthony's point, a lot of the legacy names like Aurora, Canopy, Tilray, those companies are focusing a lot on the international market. And there was a surplus of cannabis for a number of years. And now there's actually a shortage of supply. We've had some great conversations with Margaret Brody from Rubicon Organics as well. And she's kind of educated us on some of the requirements with the OCS, just saying that they want product that moves, they want variety, but in your case, it's like 3 main brands that you focus on, and they want to see change. They want to see a lot of this stuff sold. But are you seeing a lot of the same thing as well, where this Canadian market is a shortage of supply right now? And what does that look like, I guess, here in the Canadian market over the next year or two? Because it's definitely a breath of fresh air if that is indeed the case.
Yeah, no, Margaret's absolutely right. Know Margaret very well, and think she's doing extremely good work at Rubicon. But yeah, like there's many companies that grew all this production, and they either sold it off or went to CCAA, but the ones that are still hanging on are selling either, B2B within Canada previously, and then now there's this opportunity, this international opportunity where they're not building brands. They don't care about building brands or taking market share. They just care about the highest, revenue per gram.
Volume.
And the international market is on fire right now. Like I'm getting calls, multiple calls a month for our product from, to go overseas from various countries. And just as a feeler, I mean, on the wholesale market here in Canada, the price of per gram doubled since last year.
Okay.
So, and just basic, supply and demand right there shows that there's.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's definitely undersupply of cannabis. Any good quality cannabis is trying to get sold here in Canada, but the price just keeps going up and up and up.
Great to see.
And then any mass scale grown cannabis that couldn't get sold here in Canada is going international and fetching double the price as well.
Well, one thing I wanted to ask, I've heard from a couple of my Canadian friends, firsthand accounts, that your flower, smoke, the way that it looks, everything is pretty much the best that they've seen from a flower perspective in the market. Yet you're saying that the price, you're more mid-tier to, let's say, value price, and you're still making money. Are you there because that's where you think the price is eventually going to come for premium, or you're there because you can live there, you can make money, and you can then sell the volume to the consumer at that price, and that quality is not going to be diminished?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Just the value proposition. This is an ultra competitive market. We want to be the winners here, and it all comes down to the product and the value proposition that you're selling to your customer. So if I'm producing the highest quality that we can produce, and taking care of all the products and innovation that we're doing, would you rather pay double the price or half the price? And I'd rather sell the product half the price, because I know I can sell double the amount, triple the amount, quadruple the amount, 10 times the amount to get to my objective of 100,000 kilograms sold here in Canada, and I can make a 40% gross margin at this current point where I'm 10 out of 12 rooms activated, and I'm still cost cutting here and there, and things that not in terms of quality, but just as you scale, you have more power, right? When I'm purchasing 100,000 units at X price, and now I'm purchasing 1 million units at X price. Well, that's a big, decrease in cost. And then not a lot of people forget that I can save costs, traditional way of, finding those cost efficiencies or cutting and doing all that stuff. But in cannabis, what's really cool with genetics again is the yield. Yield. And we've grown a lot of genetics, and we see ones from 50 grams of plant to 120 grams of plant. Well, that changes your cost per gram a lot.
Yeah,
right.
Sure.
But then the challenge is, how do we find those high yielding plants that smoke good, taste good, look good, and check all the other boxes? And that's what we're really trying to look for. And over time, we're going to build a roster of high yielding, high powered genetics standing the test of time, generating over 90, 100 grams per plant. And, our margins are just, increased by 20, 30%. Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's get more eyeballs on this stock. But hey, heck of a story, and congrats obviously on the numbers as to what you guys just achieved. And like I said earlier, bucket list, Jazz Fest, Montreal, 3rd week of June. We got to go up there and check out this facility. But
I want to go for the Montreal Grand Prix.
That's fun too.
That's coming up.
It's a hell of a race.
Yes. Well, listen, I haven't met any of your team, but tell your team we say hello and congrats and great job and keep up the great work. But it's nice to see stories like this that are turning around the Canadian landscape. And who would have thought, here we are in 2025, and really the best opportunity right now is this Canadian market. So everything that's old is new again, and that's great to see. But Nick, appreciate you checking in here, and more importantly, let's keep in touch. Okay.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chad.
Right. Thanks. And you were at that facility how many years ago?
2017.
They
broke ground on it. 2018 they broke ground on it. I forget.
That's so $250 million facility they got for 26.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. They buy that.
They got a hell of a deal. And it's great to see that they're growing world-class flower out of it.
No kidding.
That the Canadian market's gobbling up. Because I mean, I'm pretty sure they just hit $100 million annualized run rate. So I mean, they're entrenching themselves in the Canadian market. They're going deeper when people are exporting their flower.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, cannabis, that yields sticky consumers. He's correct. I mean, the second you have a product that resonates with consumers, it gets bought up. And if it's not on the shelf, they're going to go buy something else. Consistency is key.
We keep hearing that from Margaret as well. But yeah, it's the industry's matured. You got to build quality. And it was a lot of quantity in the beginning days with no real strategy in place, and it's volumes. But yeah, and some of those
funded capacity back in the day.
Low cost producer.
Yeah.
Sounds like they bought that facility on a black.
You're starting to see you're starting to see certain LPs rise to the top.
Yes.
Yes. That's happening with the market maturing.
Aurora
and the pricing not even stabilizing, with pricing surging off the bottom. I mean, you're seeing certain LPs really start to fundamentally develop their businesses and start to really compete and hit their stride. It's good to see, considering where we've come from. Good
question by Doug. How does their quality price compare to Glasshouse? It's a good question.
They're in Canada and Glasshouses in the US, so not sure. I've heard from firsthand accounts that it is top tier in terms of quality.
Yeah.
In terms of smokability, smell, look, all the factors. And these are people that consume a lot of cannabis and buy a lot of cannabis, and they're in the industry.
How far out of Montreal is the facility?
Remember? It's about an hour.
It's an hour. Alrighty. Well, that's great. It sounds like they bought that facility on a Black Friday in 2018. That's a hell of a deal. But anyway, great story, and hope to have them back on again in the future and get some more eyeballs, like I said, on that stock. But again, trades on the TSX Venture under the ticker symbol LOVE, Love. All right, time for segment number 2 of today's podcast. Here on a Monday Traded Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dales, with AV, as we welcome in everyone's favorite guest of the week, Mr. Michael Bronstein, president of the American Trade Association for Cannabis and Hemp. How are you, sir?
Great to be here with my favorite hosts.
It's always good to see you. Looking very smart with those glasses.
Good to see you guys.
How was last week? What was on the agenda last week?
There was a lot on the agenda last week. Yeah, I mean, we saw a lot of stuff happen.
Lots to unpack.
There's a lot to unpack.
So why don't we? And I know Brian, one of our Dombrowski, he was mentioning if this is live or not, and he has some questions regarding the hemp industry in Texas. So Brian,
feels live to me.
I mean, Texas, they're not only attacking hemp, they're also attacking all of these municipal decriminalization measures that were passed in Austin and a bunch of the other cities. I mean, Ken Paxton and the boys are really waging war on cannabinoids.
It's a real swing in the other direction.
Why though? Why is this happening? Like, I understand, but this is very reactive, is it not?
I think that it is reactive. I mean, you've heard me say here before that the what's going on in Texas is a really extreme example. I think of a lot of the things that we've seen around the country. And I also said the last time that we talked that they were starting from a very conservative position to begin with. And I think what the legislature, and this came out during the hearings, and I think that when you listen to sort of the lieutenant governor and you listen to the governor, like, a lot of people didn't know or understand kind of the market and what had developed in Texas. And a lot of folks have sort of caught up to that. And from a political perspective, they don't like what they're seeing. And that's the thing that I think is really driving a lot of the discussion around in Texas, to the point where we're seeing folks really take some positions here.
Yeah.
And look, I don't think it's really the only place that this is going on. I mean, it was mentioned that Texas is a bellwether. I mean, I would say I would put Florida in as a bellwether as well. And also the thing that we've seen is that in a lot of these states that had kind of more loose and more, for lack of a better term, liberal laws regarding hemp intoxicants, we're seeing those certainly pull back. And we also have seen like instances where lawmakers, they really didn't know necessarily what they were doing on some of the laws. And then as they're trying to navigate their way out of it, sometimes they don't necessarily land on land on a position. And in industry itself, the problem that we've seen is that people have been too protective of the synthetic intoxicant industry writ large, right? Like really what we need to be focusing on is natural THC. We have people who are arguing against legalization. If we change this to a public health and safety perspective, right, we may all get more closer to where we need to be from a legalization perspective. But Texas, like, look, is there going to be a beverage carve out? We don't know. Is there going to be an expansion of the medical program? We don't know. But I think that one of the things that we are seeing is this discussion around synthetic intoxicants that are being made from being chemically converted, and that continuously comes up.
When are we looking at a timeline right now as to when we'll have some more answers? Do we know yet, or it's just
$1 million question?
Yeah, we don't know. We know when session is running to, but we don't have. I mean, I think that we'll have an answer, in my view, pretty shortly, relative to what we know is going to go on. What we know is going to go on in Texas. And everybody's watching what's going on in Texas. It's a huge potential market. And also right now, from a regulatory perspective, it is a highly unregulated market. We have people that are just sort of saying like, okay, well, this was lawful under the Farm Bill, right? But there are there are like really very few restrictions that we're seeing around. There are a few guardrails that we're seeing, few reasonable guardrails that
did you see how last week the WSWA had a fly-in, I think on Tuesday or Wednesday, into DC to lobby lawmakers, and D9 beverages were on that agenda, which if that money starts to come, you'll see, I think, some serious movement on the beverage angle.
What I commend also is the focus on naturally derived products. I mean, but they did that. They said that in a statement. Now, I think that the issue on the Farm Bill side that we have here is that there's derivative language in the Farm Bill. And really, I think in Congress, we're moving closer towards a position here. We saw both the House as well as the Senate adopt language that closes the proverbial Farm Bill loophole that folks don't seem to want to call a loophole. And the reality is that you can't get to, irrespective of what you think of the Farm Bill, we've talked about this before, you can't really get to a position in the Farm Bill because of arcane congressional jurisdiction of a point to where you are regulating in the actual underlying Farm Bill, because the underlying Farm Bill is only really dealing with the agricultural product. It's not dealing with the finished product, and the Farm Bill can't deal with the finished product. So what we have right now is a market that has exploded on interpretations around this derivative language. Law enforcement and regulators in states trying to catch up on these products. And now what we're seeing is this catch-up game is happening, right? We've seen it. We saw it in Arizona this week from the Attorney General, where they're about to take enforcement actions in Arizona on these products. There's a a temporary restraining order right now that is being discussed in court. We have the Connecticut Attorney General saying the same thing, and they've been watching this, I think, for a long time.
Yeah.
And this is sort of how, I think that if anybody's looking at a trend, like we've seen D9 beverages explode, right?
Yeah.
But what we haven't seen is the subsequent federal regulation, but also the state level regulation to follow. We're seeing stores having to remove these products from their shelves. We talk about seeing Total Wine, and everybody sees the pictures on the internet, right?
Yep.
But they had to remove product in California, and then they had to remove product in Florida, right? So we're starting to see, at least in one instance that we heard about, right? And then we're starting to see this clash, this regulatory clash that's going on right now. It's not, I think that it's gotten much quicker than folks anticipated.
What kind of leverage then do you have with the people that you're speaking to? And what is the communication that you're trying to educate people on, especially when it comes to government officials on this? We're at a crossroads within this industry, and it could go one way or the other in completely different directions if we don't get this right, or if we do get this right. So what is some of the feedback, some of the conversation and communication that you're providing to the appropriate people to make sure that this does get right? Or are you having those conversations?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're having those conversations, and we have them every day at the federal level. We have them every day at the state level. And I'll just, to be candid, I think that the advocacy, what the problem has been is that there are a lot of folks who I think, have misled regulators and lawmakers about what it was that they were selling and where it was. And they haven't taken to that very favorably. And so the issues that we're seeing in the market right now, we can read about how great things are and this, that, and the other thing, but it's turning the other direction. We're seeing this narrative right now. Okay. We saw a bill. I'll give you a good example, right? Indiana. All right. Like, talk about an example of not telling regulators necessarily what you want, right? Or what it is that you're doing. Indiana, we saw a hemp intoxicant bill going through Indiana, right? And what did it do? It set up 20,000 retail outlets, okay, and set package limits for Delta 8 THC of 3,000 milligrams per package, right? Or 100 milligrams, 3,000. Or 100 milligrams per piece of candy, right? Yeah, right. Exactly. Right. Okay. So it's like, all right, we're approaching where some of that is a little bit unreasonable. And then the other thing that bill did is it essentially would have created a loophole to be able to grow THCA flower in Indiana and then wholesale it without any retail presence, right? So it's like you could just start sending stuff over state lines.
So it's worse. It's arguably a bigger screw up than Virginia with what they have going on right now with their medical market and it's ridiculous.
It's I'm telling you. So it's like, okay, so you see sort of there hasn't been a regulatory model that's been uniform that people have landed on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. It's just not, that just hasn't happened. And then in states where we're like, okay, well, the Farm Bill, created opportunities in certain states where, for lack of a better term, they came up with adult use, basically an adult use hemp program, right? Okay. Those programs and regulations have really been dialed back, I think, relative to where folks originally who entered that market thought that they would be. So, because people started figuring out what was going on. It was like, well, we didn't anticipate legalization, right?
No.
Then we had, we've had court cases that have allowed, I think the Fourth Circuit now allows states to step in and regulate, whereas that was I didn't think it was a question in the
so many moving parts. So many moving parts.
So where does this all finally come to a head?
Yeah.
Like, like, where are we? I don't even want to use the word closure because closure is the wrong word. When does this all just?
It may wind up being the right word, depending on how things go.
I don't even know how you answer.
Where does it end? Yeah, I'll tell you where it ends. I
mean,
think
it's where it's going to begin.
Well, it's going to begin. Okay, it's going to begin like this is really the end of the beginning, not the beginning of the end.
Let's hear it.
Okay, like the end of the beginning is going to be clearing out the synthetic, intoxicants that we're seeing in the market, the HHCs, the THCPs, right?
Yeah.
The chemically converted from CBD. I think folks have wised up to that. Yeah, from a legislative perspective. The next question that they're going to ask themselves is, okay, well, we have these products around. Are we to legalize or not? If you're in a state that has legalized, look at Arizona as a good example of this, right? What you're going to see is you're going to see a movement to one program, right? It's under one regulatory structure. Okay, that's when you'll know that you're getting more certainty when you're under one regulatory structure. We're starting to see states states move in that direction.
When you say one regulatory structure, can you give an example? Like, what do you? I understand what that means.
Whichever department is regulating marijuana is the same department, like consumable marijuana products is the same department that will be regulating any consumable intoxicating product.
Gotcha.
Right? If somebody's selling a hemp product that is that type of product, it all winds up under the same same regulator in that state.
Common sense, which makes
to some, right?
Yeah.
But that's where we're headed. Is the universe expanding or contracting? I mean, I'm not here to answer, but really what we're seeing here is in my view, this is my view from the facts on the ground, is that we're seeing a regulatory contraction around this because I think, folks got over their skis on where this was. Okay. And now we're dealing with the consequences we're dealing with the consequences of that. Next, what are we going to do? We're going to move to a regulatory stage of this, right? That's where we're headed. That's where we got to be headed.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, I think we should have some movement here tomorrow on the bills in Florida around hemp. I think tomorrow's the day where we got some sort of direction on where those should be going.
I want to read a few comments. Brian Dabrowski, good to see you. I have to agree with him here. Texas will be the bellwether state. The beverage carve-out, HB 28, is being edited now. If they do this right and regulate hemp correctly, it will be a game changer for all of us at the federal level. He's got a very good point there. Do you agree?
Yeah, look, I think beverage is a very powerful mover in the market. Always have. But I'm not convinced, and I'm going back way to the beginning of this. I mean, the first thing that, and this is before, I will say this, we didn't know that beverage was going to be such a big product. All right. Because there were questions when beverage first arose. And I'm not talking a couple years ago. I'm not talking 2018, right after the Farm Bill. I'm talking like 2014, 2015, right? Like Keith Cola. Right,
the OG, yeah,
the OG, right? Like Keith was one of the founders of Attach, okay? One of the principal founders of Attach. And I remember at the time we were wondering whether, if in a beverage, that would be a form factor that would be able to sell, right? What have we found? Of course, yeah, it's a big form factor.
It's the best form factor.
It's a great form factor. Yeah. All right. And everybody's jumping into that form factor. And that can always be a motivator. But what I'm seeing sort of at the state level, I think there's more of a room for understanding about how these things fall into those markets, right? So like Minnesota, there was kind of an explosion in that, right? It's now making up a huge percentage of the market. The federal level is way trickier. Okay, it's way trickier.
Why is
correct?
That?
But
why is that?
Because we're dealing with because when you talk about beverage, you can't just create a beverage carve out at the federal level, because food and beverage, okay, when you look at the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act, it's regulated in the same way. So you can't just be like this one form factor.
Gotcha.
All right. And in the Farm Bill, since you can't regulate by final product, how do you get to a place where there's a beverage carve out in just the Farm Bill?
So what do you do in that situation?
Regulatory uncertainty.
Yeah, there's
so that's the issue. You've got to pass another law. You'd have to pass another law at the federal level. And there's this argument here that I agree with. FDA didn't do its job.
No,
I think everybody can agree that FDA.
They haven't even done their job relating to CBD, much less intoxicating hemp products.
So what law needs to pass on the federal level then?
I think that there are a couple laws that could. I think there's a couple laws that could do it. I think that if you look at anything, I think that Griffin. I think that you have I think that the people have talked about Wyden, but I think Wyden is a tough. I think Wyden is a tough sell, and the issue with Wyden's bill as it stands currently is that it keeps a lot. What it does basically is it would legalize synthetic THC over natural THC, and I think that folks have moved past. I think folks have moved past that. I think when that law was first introduced, that there might have been more of a discussion around it.
Yeah.
But I think now there's much less.
But here's the thing. Let's say HB 28 passes in Texas. Beverages are allowed to be sold in low dose forms. Naturally derived cannabinoids in the form of gummies are allowed to be sold statewide in Texas. Over the counter in smoke shops, directly to consumers online. That gets passed into law. You've then got a $35 billion industry coast to coast in the United States that is waiting for action, that is now going to get slapped in the face when you have a $3 billion industry in Texas that can sell cannabinoids directly to consumers, not pay 280E, not getting slammed with inaction from the federal government, and Trulieve is just sitting there with their hat in their hand getting slaughtered by 280E and the current environment that they're operating in. Like, honestly, as much as I want to see HB 28 happen and Texas to be able to have access to those products, it honestly adds more fuel to the fire and the problems of the overarching industry that we're in, because you're saying that, yes, cannabinoids can be legalized, but only in these form factors and only in Texas. Meanwhile, we've got a huge problem in the U.S. As it relates to the state-regulated markets that we've deemed legal on a medical and an adult use basis, if that makes sense. But I'm pretty sure it would create a bigger problem in the grand scheme of things.
Sounds pretty simple.
It very well could, right? It very well could. I don't think that this is solvable without federal action. We keep coming back to it. How do we deal with that? Right? Like, how do we deal with that? Taxes are an issue. Why hasn't there been a coordinated effort? Right? We're dealing with Schedule 3, okay, right now, which would get rid of 280E, which would be a huge boom, right? The thing that we thought starting this, which turned out to be a either not true or slower, is that we'd legalize all these states and then we get federal action, right? What happened? Okay. Like, literally, what happened?
Joe Biden reclassified cannabis.
Yeah, because Congress is like so far behind where the actual, I would say, market is, but really where the world is on a lot of issues. And we're stuck. And then to get kind of action on any bills in Congress right now, you have to be part of something bigger right now.
Correct.
Okay. Like, standalone bills are far and few between in Congress.
Yeah.
So dealing with that major issue, you have to get creative about how you're going to deal with those issues. And there's got to be much more agreement. I think when it comes to cannabis, it's like, it's not going to be like, all right, you got a majority, minority, right? Like in the States, we've really seen at first ballot measures did this, right? Then we had legislatures do it, but only legislatures of the same party and of a certain party that were doing it, right? And now we'll probably see the first, if I'm correct, probably Pennsylvania would be the first split legislature to pass legalization through a legislature, I believe, right?
It's almost like to really get this done and to get, let's say, that one framework for naturally derived cannabinoids that deschedules or legalizes, you need the alcohol industry to just come in and blow the doors off in Washington and go, guys, this is how it's going to be. Get it done. And their ears will finally perk up and they'll all fall in line.
Do you agree with that?
I don't agree with that because I've been there. I thought, okay, so I used to think the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. Where there'd be enough in there. But the thing that I found in DC is actually that if you're talking about regulating another industry and you are not that industry, everyone is skeptical as to why you're in there talking about it, right? Yeah. So it's like, and then by the way, the alcohol industry isn't uniform, right? Like it's not. It's like, okay, well, you've got, you've got wholesalers want to sell, right? But like, not all of these companies are on board. And I've talked to a lot of them. Not all of them are on board with this. Like alcohol is very conservative. And then the question is where does industry want to be, right? We're talking about a 3-tiered system. Yeah. Okay. How are these things done? And then what we've seen in states is we've seen alcohol come in and say, okay, well now really what should happen is it should be part of this 3-tiered system. Legalization should be part of it. Okay. Yeah. What we've seen in the hemp industry is like, we want direct to consumer. Right. Yeah. And it's like, well, how do you think like the alcohol guy, like, how do you think distributors feel about that?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like like you have someone who's like actively out there where their business models don't align.
Another good question, Michael, another good question here from Brian. What happens if the FDA is forced to do their job? What are the steps to regulate by way of the Farm Bill?
Well, the States Act, but the States 2.0 Act, doesn't it give the FDA 365 days and they have to act as far as regulating cannabinoids?
I would argue the FDA has the ability to regulate now.
They do.
I mean, it's like, what are they, they're like, oh, we don't have, we don't like, I've heard a lot of different arguments in the past, right? About why FDA doesn't feel like from folks around government, why FDA doesn't feel like it has jurisdiction. But like, I don't agree with that. I mean, I think that they have the ability to regulate. All right, maybe they need more funding to regulate. Maybe that's like, one of the hangups, right? Now TTB is like, TTB can't like regulate, right? So we're always like, oh, it should be over TTB. We should regulate cannabis like we regulate alcohol, right? TTB can't regulate something that's not taxed at the federal level. Yeah. So you go to them and you're like, well, TTB should do it, right? I've always thought TTB should do it.
Correct.
Right.
But if it's a financial issue with the FDA, they can funnel over some enforcement money that just doesn't need to be used anymore for cannabis in the grand scheme of things, and there's their budget. I mean, that to me sounds like a cop out. That it's a financial issue within the FDA, because this needs to be regulated.
Brian, I'll answer your question because I see it in the comment. It would have to be a separate bill. Like they'd have to run a separate bill to do it.
Love that. Is owned by BlackRock? No, I don't. That's not true.
I don't know. One thing that probably is certain here in all the comments is that Congress, yes, probably still indeed uses fax machines according to Guap, but he made a point there.
That's definitely happening.
Yeah, it definitely is. Okay, so wrapping this up again, and I always ask this question: anyone that's going through a lot of this stuff right now that needs direction, needs answers, needs help, how can they get a hold of you, and what exactly can you help people with when it comes to some of these situations that we just discussed?
What we're doing is we're obviously forming advocacy around this and been leading the conversation. Folks can go to attach.org. All of our contact information is up there to contact us. We also are, attach.org on our, on X and all the other relevant social outlets. You can get a hold of us on it. And really what we're trying to do here is we are trying to provide a clear pathway towards legalization and regulation so that this market can thrive. These distinctions that we're seeing have been brought onto us by crazy federal definitions and laws that are applied unevenly across the industry, and none of that is to our benefit right now. And that is the thing that has to change.
Well said. What'd you make last week before I let you go? Just some of the pressure that President Trump is putting on Congress to get SAFE to pass. And then you saw a little bit of a rally, but definitely grabbed a lot of people's interest. But again, I know a lot of people are not going to believe it until they see it because it was to someone anonymously. But what do you make of that?
It's welcome. That the pressure on Congress to act on safe banking is welcome. If it came from the president directly, that is welcome. It certainly matters that something like that would happen. So I think that any action that we see on that, and look, I would love to see some action on scheduling reform. Let's finish this job, okay? Because things will get better. I mean, and what does reform look like? If it's incremental, it's incremental. We'll take what we can get at the table. Okay. And I think we have to focus on that because up to date, we haven't gotten much. And it's going to be important to be able to do more and get the things that we get cannabis votes up in Congress, get people talking about the issue. Let's get it done.
Well, we're hoping to get, we've reached out to, as I said at the top of the podcast here today, Weldon Angelos on later this week. So when we get a chance, make sure to watch that because it'd be very interesting to see how his week was last week, knowing he was in Washington and met with the 47th president of the United States, President Trump, to see how things kind of unfolded there. But as always great catching up with you. And one last thing, and I know before I let you run, any updates, PA, how things are developing? Everything heading in the right direction? Yeah.
We're expecting Pennsylvania on legalization to potentially take a vote over the next couple of weeks in the House on legalization. There should be a and I think what the chambers are trying to do is set themselves up for a discussion in the budget negotiations in June. So the thing that I'm watching and looking for is a vehicle that would move from the House. I think that a vehicle that moves from the House is going to be very unfriendly from an industry perspective, potentially. And then what will happen is it'll go into negotiations where I think we'll see more reasonable, more reasonableness as to what a program looking forward is going to be. So, I remain bullish on Pennsylvania legalization moving, and I think there's going to be a good amount of action to talk about over the next month or so.
It's good to see. That's exciting. Something we need, right?
And let's pass the States Act. I'm all for that.
States Act would be perfect. It'd be a slam dunk.
It's literally the jam of legislation.
Just a simple career you chose back in grade 4 when they said, "Little Mikey, what do you want to do with your life?" Could you envision what you're doing now, my friend?
No. I still wake up and wonder.
Don't we all?
No, I'm enjoying. I very much enjoy it, and it's great. It's great to be here.
I'm not gonna lie, we love what we do too. As much as we get kind of frustrated at times, there's so much stuff that's moving all the time, every day, on so many different levels, and it's good from a media perspective. But yay, it's always great to have people like you on that are the best thought leaders in the space in their respected verticals. But as usual, love checking in with you. Let's keep in touch. Have a great week, and we'll see you back here next Monday.
I'm looking forward to it. Next time I'll do the blazer with the hoodie.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks, guys.
Michael Bronstein, president of the American Trade Association of Cannabis and Hemp. Well, that was good about Pennsylvania, but a lot of interesting stuff, that's for sure, that's developing left, right, and center. But anyway, so that's a wrap for today's show. But all in all, I thought it was a great story from just everything that we had off the top with learning more about Cannara Biotech, and good story there, didn't you think? Some of the stuff that they educated us on as far as the Canadian market.
They're focused on genetics, they're focused on plant quality, and they're focused on the consumer. Those are that's a recipe to win.
Yeah. Anybody getting some updates on the Canadian election? I saw some comments here. I don't want to get too much into politics, but yeah, just let Carney drop the excise tax in the Great White North. I think somebody said, yeah, I won't be surprised if the Liberals win, but yes, I think Pierre Poilievre is going to win. Not so sure on that one. You got to run, buddy. Little one ready for dad?
Yeah.
Anyways, we will see. For all you cannabis investors, you might want to see how things progress here in the next little bit as far as the Canadian election and what kind of impact it have on the excise tax. But, don't hold your breath. That's probably not going to be one of the major priorities off the bat once the new administration's in. But it'll be curious to see in due time how they'll view things. So anyway, big Canadian election coming up.
Really nice to get that excise tax done.
Wouldn't it? So,
yeah.
All right, we'll keep you all posted on whether Weldon Angelos will be on later this week. And we'll see you back here Wednesday at 4 p.m. with more news. Watch those markets closely and see if we rebound at all, knowing that it feels somewhat different. We've had a couple pullbacks here in the last day or two, but let's see how we go into tomorrow. And we'll see you back here Wednesday to recap. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your day. And thanks for watching, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Hey, everybody. Stay connected here. The latest Traded Black podcast. Another great episode under the belt. What'd y'all think? Do you like what we had to say? Please leave any comments below. And as usual, make sure to subscribe to our Baked In newsletter. Check us out on Apple and Spotify. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to smash that like button, leave some comments, as I said before, and subscribe to our channel because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everybody, for watching.